Welcome, Magnus here. It's been a week since I've received the R5 Mark II, and I've got a lot to say. Now, if you're looking for photography analysis and video analysis, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to explain to you my experience, and me as a videographer, I'm barely going to touch on the photography side. But I'll give you a little bit if you're into photography. This thing is amazing when it comes to taking photos, but so was the original R5. I don't know if there's enough of a reason to get the R5 Mark II if you're doing great with the R5. 20 frames per second photos versus 30 frames per second photos in electronic shutter and less rolling shutters. So if you need that or pre-shooting and improved autofocus, if that's your thing, then sure, pick up the camera. Or if you don't have either camera, I would definitely recommend paying the extra premium price for the R5 Mark II for photos when compared to the original R5, which is still a great camera. If you want to save for an extra lens and get the original R5, you'd be great. No complaints with that. But today I'm going to talk about several things that I was able to test within a week of the original R5 Mark II for video. And if you like to talk about video when it comes to mirrorless cameras like I do, definitely consider subscribing because that's what I'm going to do for you right now today. And today I'm recording with the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. But that's only because I've got the R5 Mark II in hand. And if it wasn't for that, I'd be recording with the R5 Mark II all the time. And if you stick around in the video, I'm going to tell you my absolute favorite feature that the original R5 Mark I could not do, that the R5 Mark II does, and I love it. First, let's talk about something that a lot of the online creators have touched upon, but have not had the same experience as me, and that's overheating while recording. Now, I did not do a bunch of overheating tests, so I'm going to show you right here. But I did do one very important test for me. See, I had an important video shoot this past Sunday that I needed to bring the R5 Mark II to, and I wanted to make sure that I did not have any overheating problems during that long shoot because I recorded 2 dance recitals. Each one was about an hour, and I wanted to record in a higher mode that would tend to overheat, and I did not want the R5 Mark II to overheat on me because the R5 Mark I stopped overheating after that firmware 1.6 update. Now, when it comes to overheating, I've seen others online give certain specific numbers that worried me that the R5 Mark II would overheat unless you got that built-in fan. Well, after a live test, which I showed you right here, I was able to record 8K compressed IPB, 24 frames per second, over 3 hours on the R5 Mark II and the R5 Mark I. Both cameras were able to record over 3 hours of 8K at 24 frames per second compressed. And though I got the overheating warning on both cameras, none of them shut off over 3 hours. And I'm not doing productions over 3 hours. So from that extent, the R5 Mark II basically fulfills my needs and thankfully does not stop at the 30-minute mark where I had to keep on pressing the record button over and over and over again on the R5 Mark I, which, wow, great camera. There's a lot of things, and I've got future videos planned, but there's a lot of things that Canon did. It's like they took the R5 Mark I and was like, okay, what's every problem you got with it? We're going to fix that. And they did, and they gave us a little bit more, which I like. This is the best camera I've ever used for video, bar none. So after that, I wanted to do a dynamic range test because, again, I was comparing R5 Mark I with R5 Mark II because I really wanted to dive into the features. Now, on this dynamic range test, C-Log 2 versus C-Log 3, R5 Mark I versus R5 Mark II, and the dynamic range is noticeable in the footage. I featured Delulu, which is another online creator on TikTok. You can follow her. But from that perspective, I was able to see when we were recording outside that the R5 Mark II just gives you a little bit more of that dynamic range that I've been absolutely looking for. Why? Because then you could actually compare that footage to cinema camera footage, and it's all in this body that basically does it all. So yeah, simple test right there. But with that test, I was able to see, like, yeah, they've upgraded. Because being limited to C-Log 3, though it was great to use when compared to just regular C-Log, is that little bit more that you can get. And if you don't know, the original R5 Mark I could record C-Log 2. That's if you recorded RAW and then in post, switch it to C-Log 2. But you would not get that extra dynamic range that you could get when you record real C-Log 2 off of the camera. It still has technically 14 stops of dynamic range. And you can record the shadows in C-Log 2, the real format, when you record with the R5 Mark II. Moving on. Now, like I said, I had a real video shoot planned for this past Sunday, which actually I recorded yesterday as of recording this video. And in that, I used both the original R5 Mark I, which is actually over there, but I'm not going to grab it right now because I don't want to lose my focus distance. R5 Mark I and R5 Mark II. I used a 50mm RF lens on the R5 Mark I, and I use a 24-70, which I'm using right now on the Blackmagic Cinema camera to record this. 2 different angles. But even though I wanted to test the 8K footage, in this particular shoot, I used one of my favorite features on the R5 Mark II that was not in the R5 Mark I. But I was excited about it, and I wanted to try it out, and I couldn't believe it. There's a couple of caveats that I want to mention, but I was so pleased that I could record 4K RAW. I played with this footage and editing off my laptop that isn't as powerful as my desktop. I was able to edit this 4K RAW footage easily, which makes it so much easier. Now, I don't plan on using 4K RAW footage when it comes to professional shoots. I still want to stick to 8K RAW, get that whole resolution, be able to punch in and do a lot of things in post. And I have no problem doing that with the R5 Mark I or the R5 Mark II. But when editing something like a YouTube video like I'm recording now, I lean towards Blackmagic RAW if I want to record RAW because it's easier and the files are smaller, whether it's the 4K or the 6K. But the SRAW, when you use the highest compression mode on the R5 Mark II, the SRAW in 4K can actually be as low as less than 400 megabits per second. Yeah, the SRAW is 330 megabits per second. Now, to me, that is incredible. I recorded not only SRAW in the highest compressed RAW, but in a slightly less compressed RAW. And the difference is like 770 versus 330 megabits per second. But in comparison, the difference is negligible. But that's okay. For a YouTube video, it's enough. And for the dance video that I recorded, you still get incredible amounts of detail with the flexibility of post-production processing in RAW. Freaking phenomenal. And was I worried about overheating? No, because I recorded both shows 4K RAW, 0 overheating or overheating warning. So what does that mean? Should I get the built-in grip with the fan? Absolutely not. Not for my production. Some productions might require it, but my productions do not require it. Sure, if you're filming a lot of 8K 60, maybe you might want it, but no, I'm not going to use it. Now, it's known for the 4K itself, when it comes to 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, it's not oversampled. The R5C actually has 4K 60 and it's oversampled from the 8K sensor. So it's like, R5C, is it better than the R5 Mark II when it comes to video? In that sense, I will say that for me personally, now everyone's different, I'm not recording a lot of footage in 4K 60 at all. Unless I want to slow it down, then I can. If you need that oversampled footage, which 4K 60 looks fine off of this camera, but you really want it better, and you're recording in spurts, not long shoots, but in spurts, you do have the option of recording 8K 60, then downsampling it yourself in post from RAW, which is something that is nice. And yes, you can do it on the R5C, but you could also do it on the R5 Mark II, and it'll work just fine. If you want longer footage than that in 4K 60, that might be a little bit tough, because we have to acknowledge the fact that CF Express Type B cards, though they've gone down in prices since the original R5 Mark I launched, they're still quite expensive. 1 terabyte will get you some footage, where if you had 4K 60 oversampled, it would be a lot easier. So I'm not disregarding that. Now, I haven't tested a lot of things on this camera because I'm just getting into it. But there are a couple of upgrade tips that I wanted to share when it comes to going from the R5 Mark I to the R5 Mark II that you've got to pay attention to, and then I ran into when upgrade. Now, one of the first things is that setting the video settings is completely different. I did a quick YouTube short about this, where it's like the video settings themselves separate the compression type from the codec and everything else. When you pick your compression type, whether it's just RAW or different compression styles, then you're able to see what video options that you have and how much it's compressed in like a different menu. So that's a little bit separated. Second, and important, is that before on the R5 Mark I, choosing C-Log 3 or regular C-Log, you just go into a separate menu specifically for that. Then you could have the preview monitor there or not, and just minor settings. But you were also able to choose the color space, whether you wanted Rec 709, Rec 2020, or Cinema Gamut on the original R5 Mark I. On the R5 Mark II, it's a lot deeper. Now, the R5 Mark II, you have to go into setting a custom picture profile. In that custom picture profile, then you can choose Canon 709, C-Log 2, or C-Log 3. And then from there, when you edit the settings, you can choose a Rec 709 color profile or other profiles that are recommended, like Cinema Gamut C-Log 2 or Cinema Gamut C-Log 3. I defaulted to Cinema Gamut C-Log 2. Another thing, in these menu settings, I'm going deep. Again, I'm just feeding you guys information. It's got, in the color matrix settings, it's got neutral, production camera, and video. And from what I understand, neutral is more of a kind of a greenish tint. Production camera is more of a magenta. And then the video is more of a magenta as well as the production camera was. But it also has a little bit more contrast built into that color profile. So there's a lot of tweaks that you could do with this camera that you just weren't able to do before. Now, I haven't used the other scales. I've kept the little metric scale in there, but there's false color. There's other monitoring tools that it now has that we've wanted from Canon for a long time. It's almost like, even though this isn't technically a cinema camera, it has so many tools that it comes pretty close to a cinema camera. And that extra dynamic range just, wow, makes it so much better. And it's easier to edit the files since it allows you to pick actual codecs that make it easier for you to edit if you do not want to edit off the H.265 files. It's like amazing. And it's got a tally light, but I turned off the tally light specifically for my shoot that I had with the dance recital because it would have been distracting to the dancers. It allows you to turn it off, but in normal shoots like what I'm doing right now, for example, my Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame has a tally light, so I know it's recording and I'll know if it stopped and it's still recording. So that's fine. But so far, those are my tests. And honestly, to come to a conclusion, and I'm going to mention one thing that I wish it had, but they didn't include. The R5 was great, but it wasn't perfect when it was first launched. The overheating was a little bit annoying. Although they fixed that, the other annoying issue was the time limit, that 30-minute time limit. With this camera, and after testing the overheating and realizing it's really not going to happen, again, over 3 hours, which YouTubers have been like, no, you get like 40, 60 minutes or whatever in AK-24. I got over 3 hours. Like, what are you talking about? And that's with the high temperature setting in the camera. And the room was about 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So from that standpoint, it's like amazing when it comes to those features. Perfect camera. I can basically say it does everything. Full size HDMI, which I haven't used yet. I'll be totally honest. But I've only had the camera a week. There's so much more to test, and even compare with the original R5. And then tips and tricks, because I've already discovered a ton of things. But I can only keep this video so long before I just go on for too long. One feature that it's missing that I definitely want to share with you guys is actually a feature that I'm using with the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame. Yes, I gotta say the whole name. I'm using it right now. I'm recording in open gate. Allows for the ability to change your framing and kind of record 2 videos in once. One for vertical and one for horizontal without having to crop too much in post, which is something that I wanted it to have, but it doesn't. However, can't complain too much because other than that, this camera is perfect. Did I mention 4 channels of audio? One more thing that I experienced that I need you guys to know. When I was recording that dance recital, this thing has 4 channels of audio. I went through the quick menu and I immediately started to change the settings of audio to lower it a little bit because the music was loud. What I didn't realize, it was changing the onboard microphone. And even though I had a shotgun mic at the top to record those extra other 2 channels, it was only adjusting the onboard microphone. I had to go in the menus, and I didn't realize this at first. I had to go in the menus to change that microphone's levels to bring it down a bit as well. So I realized that eventually, and I did change them. But you gotta be aware, because you have more channels of audio, you gotta make sure that when you're adjusting the audio settings, that you're doing it for the right microphone connection. So that's that last tip. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of the R5 Mark II. It's so far so good, the perfect camera for me. Now, if I run into any situations, I'm definitely going to let you guys know. Watch my shorts, watch my videos, definitely do all the good things. I'm going to leave affiliate links below to pick up the R5 Mark II as well. It helps out this channel because it doesn't cost you anything more, but it gives me a little kickback, which I make these videos and I really don't make much off of YouTube. So it would definitely help inspire me more. But you know what helps inspire me even more than that? And it doesn't cost you a dime? By making my day. If you subscribe today, this is Magnus, and I'm out. More videos to come soon. Thank you. See you later.
Magnus Video Productions, the place to